Tonight we're looking at Mark chapter 8. Who is Jesus? Verse 1 through 4 says, In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to do and nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way. For some of them have come from far. Then his disciples answered him, How can one satisfy these people with bread here, in the wilderness? So Jesus again, this is after feeding the 5,000. This happened after. This happened after that. So this is a different time that they're going to be feeding some more people. But he had taught them for 3 days. You sit there and listen to somebody for 3 days, you're going to get tired and hungry, aren't you, if he didn't bring you something? And they're out in the wilderness. They're not down where they run down and give them a hamburger somewhere or something. If they didn't bring it with them, they didn't have it to eat. So Jesus was trying to have compassion on the people out there, trying to tell his disciples, hey, you go find them something to eat. And they're like, where? Where are you going to?
Nothing.
Yeah, where are we going to get it? They couldn't even go out and fish, it's too far away, I guess, from the ocean, and they couldn't, or not the ocean, the sea. Yeah, it was in the wilderness, and they couldn't catch that many unless Jesus told them to go to that particular one.
Our version of wilderness today is not like their version.
It depends. I guarantee you go out the Panhandle in southwest Kansas and you can drive for a long time and not see somebody.
Yeah.
I was driving our roads out there was county roads. So pretty much all you got. They got a highway going up and down every once in a while. But most of the time you're just driving on highway roads and they're straight. They're county roads. And you just measure off. You go, okay, it's 15 miles this way and 20 miles north to the well, and then you go 2 miles and whatever, and you get there. So you're just driving along, and it was cloudy like it was a while ago, no sun shining, and I looked up and I'm like, which direction am I going? Because everything looks the same. I mean, it's just field of wheat or field of corn or field of whatever. And you can drive and drive and drive, and I got to figure out which way I'm going because I got turned up here somewhere. And every once in a while, they'll have stop signs. You're going to that stop sign. If you see the stop sign, okay, you got to turn. So you got to be careful. But yeah, there are still places here in the U.S. that it's pretty desolate, and we've got some not too far from here. You can go down south of Okmulgee, getting into the Arbuckle, Washita Mountains or whatever, not the Washita, but those mountains down there in Tishmingo, you get lost real easy.
Well, did you say that the Chosen, the new, isn't out?
It's not. It'll start in the movie house.
Well,
okay.
On Sunday afternoon at
March
12:00 you can watch Chosen, and then again at 3:00 there's a Chosen.
Yes, but that's seasons 1 through 4. We've already seen all those.
Oh.
Yeah, they haven't shown anything except small 2-3 minute clips.
Yeah, 5.
Well, 5. They're going to have them in the movies. If you want to go see it, you have to go to the movies, and they'll have 3 different movies. The first one is it's season 5, but it's 1, 2, and 3 episodes. I think it's 1 and 2 episodes, and then 3, 4, and 5 episodes, 6, 7, and 8 at the movie house. And they'll run for probably 2 months. And then they'll put it on Prime. I think it's supposed to be in June. That'll be about 2 months afterwards. So when it goes on Prime, we can watch it. I can use my account in here, and we can watch it.
When have you decided about the House of David?
We can watch that whenever we want. It'll be on Prime also. It's not all the way out. It won't be released till tomorrow, I don't think, or maybe Monday.
So we finish the book of Mark, maybe we can.
Yeah, we'll finish the book of Mark first, and then we watch David. When we get into that, I'll tell you about it. It's a little. The first 3 episodes I saw, it's good. I like it. It gets a little deeper into Judaism or the non-biblical history of the Jewish people. Okay, and I'll tell you more about it later. It's not a big thing,
Yeah,
but
but it's easier to explain it as you go along, so
Sure,
we understand
sure.
what we're looking at. You know?
Right.
But thank you for offering that for us to see that, because I think it'd be interesting.
So verse 5, Jesus said, he asked them, how many loaves do you have? Because they know they've taken some food out there. And they said 7. So he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And that's all they said. He asked them how many loaves you had. So he told them, we got 7 loaves. And loaves may have been just the little pita breads, one. It's not even enough for each one of them. There's 12 disciples plus Jesus. So there's not even enough, for that. So it may have been bigger loaves. They have bigger, long loaves too. So he took those 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them, gave them to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the multitude. They also had a few small fish. And having blessed them, he said unto them also, set them also before them. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. Now those who had eaten were about 4,000. And he sent them away immediately, got into the boat with his disciples, and came into the region of Dalmatia. So Jesus, in the previous version that we had heard of this, a little boy had the fish, had 5 loaves and 2 fish. This particular one's, we don't know exactly. It sounded like maybe one of the disciples had some of their lunch left over, or 2 or 3 of them had their lunch. We don't know, but what did Jesus do?
He fed him.
He said, give it to me. First of all, he told them, he said, he said, these people have followed me for 3 days and listened to it, their heart. You feed them. Well, they're panicking, kind of like that other side when they said, you go feed them. They said, we had a year's wages. We couldn't go out and buy enough food for these people. Well, here he told them, you feed them. Why do you think
he wanted them to learn how to do it for himself.
We are so...
And trust his wisdom.
We are so caught up in the moment of what's happening. A lot of times we don't remember. So just a few time periods ago, I can't say days or weeks, I don't know how long it was, but just a certain time period ago, he fed 5,000. And they didn't remember that, or wasn't thinking of that, or something. They saw a miracle, and he's just testing them now. Well, give me what you have, and that'll be enough. So it may have been somebody's food, and they gave, okay, we got the bread here. And he said, well, I'm not going to give him my fish because I might eat my fish later. Well, he started out, who knows what they said. And then he brings up, oh yeah, I got these couple of fish over here too, if you want to multiply that. And that's just like us. Offering plate comes by, and okay, I'll give him $1. We've been given $1 for 50 years. $1 may not be making it nowadays. That's right. That's so many people have given the same thing. I think I told the story to y'all once. I had a supervisor that he was going to church, and he was taking up the offering in his church. And I don't know what it was. They did it monthly, I guess. They rotated. But I said, did you put your tithes in? And he goes, my tithes? or 10%, that's what he said. What do you mean? I said, 10%, your tithes. 10%? He said, no, I'll put in 20. And that's, some people, that's good enough for them. what Jesus here told them, give me everything you got. Another place he told the rich man, go sell everything you have and come follow me. He couldn't do it. To us, our possessions are part of us almost. You may not think you're attached to anything, but you are. That's right.
I had to ask for it. That's fine. Tell me how. You know.
Well, that's right. You show me how, and we'll do it. You know, so long ago, Mom, when we were going to church, before Dad started going to church, we would drive down to, it was just not too far from where Grandma lived. It's where the church was. It's 6, 7 miles, I guess, from our house. Wasn't real far. It was too far to walk. But we would make that trek, you know, Sunday morning, Wednesday night, Tuesday night they'd have a prayer meeting, I don't know where, somewhere, somebody's house, and we'd go to those, but we did that all the time, and that's what was used to. We didn't watch that much television. I mean, there was television on, but you only had 3 channels, and, you know,
Yeah.
one of them was Gunsmoke, and the other was Bonanza. So if you don't like this, anyway, we get caught up in what we do. Today we get lazy. Oh, I don't want to go, or I don't want to do this, or I got something else to do. It messes up our plans. Jesus is messing up their plans here. Somebody had in his pocket had that 5 loaves or 7 loaves and a couple of fish, and he said, "Give it to me." Like, I'm not going to be able to eat. He said everybody was filled, and they had 7 baskets full. The word they used for basket there, before, when they had the 12 baskets full, it was more like a lunch bucket. So they had 12 of them full. These, the word for, I think, if I haven't got these out, it says they took up 7 large baskets. These are like the big laundry baskets, big old baskets. They had 7 of those full. Again, not missing out on any of it. He multiplied it. Hey, we can use that later if we need to. You know, because they took it up. They're not going to waste that. So then he dismissed the people and they went on about their business. Then he went to Dalmatha, another area over in the Decapolis, I believe it is. Then the Pharisees came out and began to dispute with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, testing him. But he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Assuredly, I say to you, no sign shall be given to this generation. The Pharisees had already seen what had happened before. The healing of the blind, the raising of the dead. They've heard of these incidences. Some of them, I'm sure they even saw it happen. But they wanted him to do your magic in front of me. I want to see it. And Jesus is like, no, you don't understand. This is not, it's not a magic show. I'm not going to do any signs. You're seeking signs when the signs have already happened. These people are following because of the signs. Okay, you're not going to get it. So the Pharisees was just trying to push him to do what they wanted to do, to show him that they were the Messiah. He said, hey, if you can't believe what's already happened, he says this later, but not right here. He said, no sign is going to be given to this generation. Already, several signs have been shown.
Yeah.
Many of the prophecies had already been fulfilled. He'd already mentioned several times where he was fulfilling
And they weren't really all catching on.
Not even his disciples. Because we see here, after he leaves talking to the Pharisees, he talks to his disciples. And he left them, the Pharisees, and getting into the boat again, departed to the other side. And it was with his disciples, okay? Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. They had 7 baskets full, and they didn't take any bread with them. But they did not have any more than 1 loaf with them in the boat. Then he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Okay, one place it says Herodians. Another place it says Pharisees and Herodians. We read that earlier in the book. But he's telling them, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and beware of the people of Herod. What does leaven mean? I mean, what is leaven?
No yeast.
Is a yeast. What does yeast do?
It makes it rise.
It infects the whole dough, doesn't it? You put a little pinch in a dough, and it spreads through that whole loaf till it makes it rise up. It's a indicator or a type or a shadow, or however else you want to put it, of sin. Also, because that's why God told Moses before they were getting ready to leave Egypt, get all the leaven out of your house. I don't want it. You're going to eat unleavened bread for 7 days before they got out there. Okay? Leaven here is what he's talking about. And the disciples, they didn't know what he was trying to tell them. He just talked to the Pharisees and told them, look, they were looking the wrong way. We've been doing all these signs all the time. But they thought, well, we'll read it here in the next one. 16 says, and they reasoned, the disciples, reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Is your heart still hardened? Having eyes, do not ye see? And having ears, do not you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said to him, 12. And when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said 7. So he said to them, how is it you don't understand? He said, I'm not talking about bread. If I needed some more bread, you got a loaf there. I could multiply it and we could all eat here. I did it twice before. I'm talking about the Pharisees seeking a sign. They want it done on their timetable, and they want proof, solid proof, of who I am.
Put it in my face.
That's right. And even though it was there, they couldn't understand that. So that's what he's telling his disciples, beware. The Pharisees are acting like what we talked about a few weeks ago, hypocrites. They want to see him doing the very same thing that they do. They want him to follow the directions just like this. And he was following the Father.
So do you think they didn't really like his ways?
The disciples? Or the Pharisees? The Pharisees didn't. No, they didn't like his ways.
The disciples was okay with it.
But the disciples was just trying to learn from him.
Yeah,
but the Pharisees, he was upsetting their apple cart.
They just want their way on.
They want their way. Why did your disciples eat with unwashed hands? He said a few weeks ago when we talked about it. Why did your disciples not fast? Why do your disciples do this and that? And he's just flabbergasted at them, trying to tell them, explain to them that what's happening and why his disciples is different than any of the other disciples. Because you've got the teacher of teachers there. Not just anybody, but the Son of Man, the title that he's chosen for himself.
And he's also going to teach them they need to change their ways.
Right. Well, not listen to the Pharisees. The Pharisees were trying to push them into the old ways.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm trying to tell you a better way.
Drop some of this stuff and do it my way.
Right. It's find it after your heart. He talked about them when we said, you wash your hands, but yet you turn right around and you won't give your mom and dad any money because you said all that I've given to God, so God's going to want you to give it to my mom and dad. Now the Bible tells us in the 10 Commandments, honor your father and mother. That's like number 5 or 6 in there. So it comes pretty high up that's what you need to be following. You don't need to be following, some ritual that they set up, the Pharisees did, to get by and not have to give all they wanted.
They're just ignoring it all.
Well, they are. And that's what Jesus is trying to tell them. You're not doing it for the right reasons. 22. Then he came to the Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him, and he begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and he put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw everyone clearly. Then he sent them away to his house, the blind men, saying, neither go into town nor tell anyone in the town. Go straight home, don't tell anybody about it. This is a different type of healing than we've seen before. All the other healings are not the same anyway, but this is definitely different. The blind man wanted him to touch him. He couldn't see. He could hear, oh, here's Jesus. Jesus could talk to him and everything, but he wouldn't know if it's Jesus or not. Jesus touched me. That's what he wanted. He wanted that touch. And Jesus did touch him. So he spit on his eyes and put his hands on him. But then he asked him if he saw anything. This is the only miracle that we've seen here. It's what they call a partial miracle. He saw men walking as trees. Well, I could probably, in my eyes, mind, a person's been blind his whole life, and he just, his eyes are open, but he's never, he tells him to open his eyes, and for the first time he can actually see something. And I know when I was a little kid, I had allergies, still have allergies real bad. And I'd wake up in the morning, my eyes would be just almost mad, closed. I couldn't hardly, Mom would have to take a washer in almost to it. And I could see that, open them up, and you can see through the eyelids, but it's all gooey and glummy, and I could see that that's maybe what he saw. And then again, he said he saw him that way, so Jesus again put his hands on him, and then he saw clearly. He may have been wiping all the snot out of his eyes. I don't know what it was. It may have been Paul had scales fall from his eyes when he was, so I don't know exactly what happened. It doesn't tell us exactly why it was done this way, but it was. So then it was complete. The healing was complete. But this first time, that's what he said. Now, a little bit later, remember this. I'm going to bring this up again in just a few minutes because there's another type and shadow of this in just a minute. Verse 27. Now Jesus and his disciples went out to the town of Caesarea Philippi. And on the road he asked his disciples, saying to them, who do men say that I am? So they answered, John the Baptist. But some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? And who spoke up? Peter. Peter answered and said to him, you are the Christ. Then he strictly warned them that they should tell no one about him. That's where he's telling him, you understand who I was. I was sent from the Father. That I am the Christ. I am the Messiah. He didn't want that known right then because he still had more things to do. Once the Pharisees and Sadducees and all the
That's what he
others,
said. It's not the right time.
it's not the right time. He still had some more time to do a few more things before his time was come. So Peter was the one that answered him. Okay, remember that. He did that. Remember reading that in Matthew also. So it goes on a little bit later, and of course he talks about all the different disciples, the prophets that they talked about, and we said that the prophet, I don't think they've been to the Mount Transfiguration yet, but they'll see that in just a little bit. They'll see Moses and Elijah. So they're seeing these things, and he said, who do you say I am? He wants them. I don't want what everybody else is saying. So then he began to teach them, verse 31, that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke this word openly. So this is one of the first times he's telling his disciples that he's going to get persecuted. He's going to be killed because he is the Son of Man, because he is the Messiah, because they understand that it's going to go against the Pharisees, Sadducees. It's going to go against Herod because he's going to assume it's a new king trying to take over. So all this is he's trying to set them up, telling them this is going to happen. This is what I was sent to do. They don't like that. Okay? They don't.
Too bad.
Yeah. But we see it as we saw it in the show, and what happened next. Peter then took him aside and he began to rebuke Jesus. But when he had turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. Just a few minutes ago, he saw him as the Son of Man. He saw him as a Messiah. Now he's saying things, and Jesus said, you're seeing things the way Satan sees things.
Why would Peter change?
Because he said, no, we're not going to, if you go back to the way Matthew portrayed it, he said, we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to, they're not going to get to you. You can't say that. Mark's a little more concise.
I'm like, Peter, who do you think you're talking to?
Well, that's what he said. That's why he rebuked him, because it was actually Satan coming against him through Peter. Okay? But Peter now sees what he's talking about. Go back to the blind man.
Yeah.
The blind man saw halfway through the first time Jesus told him. And then the second time, he saw it as it was. And that's why Peter rebuking him the second time. Now he sees what Jesus is trying to do. He sees, okay, he's telling the truth. He's going to die. So that's similar, okay, if you compare those two stories right there together, they do match, and they do, it's repetition of what he's trying to teach them. Verse 34, when he had called the people to himself with his disciples, also, he said to them, whosoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now, there were other people there. They'd come back. Okay, he'd sent them away for a while. Now some more people came. And he said, if you really want to follow me, like my disciples are, take up my cross. What is he telling them? You're going to have to die too. People aren't going to like it. When you start teaching my teachings, when you start doing the things that I'm doing. He sent them out already, and they had already cast out demons, and they had some miracles happen. Some of them got kicked out of the town. Some, all these things happen. But Jesus is now telling them, it's going to happen to you too. These are the things. And sure enough, as we see in the later end, all of them except John, that we are aware of, is the only one that died. John the Revelator died of a natural death. One explanation is the cross wasn't about religious ceremonies. It wasn't about traditions and spiritual feelings. The cross was a way to execute people. In these 20 centuries after Christ, we've sanitized it and ritualized the cross. How would we receive it if Jesus said, walk down death row daily and follow me? Okay? Taking up your cross wasn't a journey. It's a one-way trip. And that's what he's trying to tell them. Jesus makes deny himself equal with take up his cross. There's one and the other. You got to do, if you're doing one, you're doing the other too. The two express the same idea. The cross wasn't about self-promotion or self-affirmation. The person carrying the cross knew they couldn't save themselves. They were under that. Verse 35. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whosoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him the Son of Man also will be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. And he said to them, Assuredly I say to you, that there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the kingdom of God present with power. To me, that's it's just re-emphasizing what he said before. It's telling you, you're going to have to, if you want to save your life, you got to lose it. You got to go follow him. If you want to lose your life, if you want to save yourself, you got to lose it. If we save ourselves, then we're not going to lose our life.
No.
I mean, we'll save ourselves, but we won't make it to heaven.
No.
You can't exchange anything of monetary value for your soul. That's what he's telling us. And it says, Surely I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God present with power. I can really say, I'm not sure what that means. Because all of those people that walked with Jesus are now gone. Now they are in heaven. I can say that, I know that. It says walking with Jesus doesn't just mean a life of death and crosses. It also means a life of the power and glory of the kingdom of God. Jesus promised some of his disciples glimpses of that power and glory. And we see that. Paul, he was carried to the third heaven. John saw the door open in the throne room. Several others along the way had seen these things. Now, it said they're not going to taste death. We look at that as saying they're not going to die. I don't think that's what he's saying, because all of them are dead now. Okay? But we will be resurrected. We don't understand what happens when we die, because nobody's ever come back from the dead and told us except Jesus.
That would be awful spooky too.
Well, he came back and he told us exactly what we need to do. It's a transition. We don't like transitions. We don't like change, no matter what it is.
And if it was, and because it wasn't directly Christ that was telling us this, we would be suspicious.
Yeah.
We would. Yeah. Because do I actually believe it?
Right. All right. Well, we'll pick up next week with chapter 9.
Thank you, young man, for your teaching.
Well, I had an experience when he passed.
Uh-huh.